18th of May 2025, and if we could commence with our usual karakia, please. Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ei he aki ana te atakura, hei tio, hei huka, hei hauhu, te hei mauriora. Welcome, as I said, to those in the public domain as well as media, those watching online, and to staff and councillors. Nice to be with you. Just noting that we have no apologies and that we have Councillor Boyle online. Just checking that you can hear us okay, Councillor Boyle? He's not on at the moment. Okay, he did request approval, which I granted. We have no public participation today, no late items. Any declarations of interest from councillors? All right.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry, Councillor Branning.
Yeah, sorry, 8.1, page 367, the emergency management component of the OPR. I'll just step away and if there's any discussion on that.
So noted. All right. So, Councillor Horitapa.
So 7.4, the property strategy. I've taken advice from the Chief Executive and considered what conflict of interest may exist in me participating in this decision. Given my association and whakapapa with Mūpoko and Ngāti Raukawa, while I acknowledge the perceived conflict, the decision before us today is a policy decision. They are not decisions that create a clear pecuniary interest for anyone. If and when that arises, I will declare an interest and remove myself from the decisions at the time. But the potential for that to happen does not preclude me from participating in a policy decision that deserves the representation role I was democratically elected to.
So noted, thank you. Councillor Tamihana.
I'm going to say the same words. Similar, taking advice from the Chief Executive, also considered what potential conflicts by me participating in today's decision would be, given my association and my whakapapa with Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Huia. I acknowledge that there's potentially a perceived conflict. The decision before us today is about a policy decision. They are not decisions that create a clear pecuniary interest for anyone. If and when that arises, I would declare an interest and remove myself from those decisions at the time. But the potential for that to happen does not preclude me from participating in a policy decision that deserves representation, role I was democratically elected for. Like many of you, I wear a number of hats, but for this decision through the development of this policy, I firmly worn the hat of an elected member. Therefore, I confirm I'm not declaring a conflict of interest and intend to participate fully in today's discussions and decision-making process.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Brooke.
I'll read out my conflict as well, which is very similar to the last two. I have taken advice from the Chief Executive and consider what conflict of interest may exist in me participating in the item that was mentioned before. Given my association of whakapapa with Mūpoko, while I acknowledge the perceived conflict, the decision before us today is a policy decision. They are not decisions that create a clear pecuniary interest for anyone. If and when that arises, I would declare an interest and remove myself from those decisions at the time. But the potential for that to happen does not preclude me from participating in a policy decision that deserves the representation role I was democratically elected to do. Like many of you, I wear a number of hats, but for this decision and through the development of this policy, I firmly wore the hat as an elected member of the Waipu. Therefore, I can confirm that I am not declaring a conflict of interest and intend to participate in the decision-making process.
Look, just acknowledge all three that have made that announcement. I think it's important that the public are fully aware and up to the transparency and openness of the fact that you have then considered whether there is a conflict or not. So I appreciate that. And thank you.
Can I please just add a comment to my statement, though? That it is quite offensive that this only applied to Māori elected members of this council, and I want that recorded. Kia ora.
Probably a statement that could be made during the debate, maybe. Let's move on. Just noting that Councillor Boyle is online.
Just as a point of order, Mr. Mayor, under clause 26.2 of standing orders, that feels to me like misrepresentation to say that conflicts, the requirement for excusing themselves, explaining why they don't have conflicts, applies only to Māori. That feels like misrepresentation to me under standing orders.
Thank you, and I would endorse that statement as well. All right, so moving to 6.1, which is we're moving to the recommendations around the minutes, and I'm going to move these on block. That the meeting minutes of Council 26th of March 2025 be accepted as a true and correct record, that the meeting minutes of the public excluded meeting of Council 26th of March 2025 be accepted as a true and correct record, and that the meeting minutes of the extraordinary meeting of Council for the 30th of April 2025 be accepted as a true and correct record. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving to 6.1, the mayoral report. Can I move that the report be received and noted? Seconded by Councillor Young. Thank you. Just also then recommendations B and C. That Council authorises the Mayor and Councillors Jennings and Olsen to attend the Local Government New Zealand Conference to be held in Christchurch from the 15th to the 18th of July 2025, and that Council nominates Councillors Jennings and Olsen as the alternates to exercise Council's voting rights should the presiding delegate not be in attendance at the 2025 Annual General Meeting of Local Government New Zealand. Can I have a second and a mover of that? Councillor Grimstone, Councillor Brannigan. So moved. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Any commentary or questions regarding the mayoral report and any of those attachments to that? Councillor Tamihana.
Yeah, I just note that you've got attendance here for the launch of the Papangawa Te Whārangi Manatū Street Management Plan, but I didn't see you there, so I just wonder if that's a notice.
Oh, you're correct. I was not.
Anything else on that list that maybe I didn't see you?
I missed that one, sorry. Yes. I had another engagement. Sorry. Yeah, but good noting, spotting, and we will amend that report accordingly. Anything else, Councillor Tamihana? Nothing. Thank you. All right. Then moving to members' report back on the Te Mara'ata Conference. Move that this report be received and noted. I'm assuming that Councillors Hori Tapa and Tamihana would like to move and second that. Thank you. All those in favour? Any further comments or questions on that report? Councillor Tamihana.
The only comment from me was just to thank the Council for the opportunity to attend Te Mara'ata. For those listeners that don't know who Te Mara'ata are, that's Māori elected members across Aotearoa whose councils are a part of LGNZ, and so similar to an LGNZ conference, Māori elected members have the opportunity to come together and workshop and do some whakawhanaungatanga also, so I just wanted to share that. I found it to be very rich and enlightening, and many of the issues facing, I believe, the whānau that we represent, myself and Nina, are experiencing the same issues across the country, and so at this time, you know, in our history, it's a challenging time, but through groups such as this, the ability to share and reflect on what's priority to our Māori, is a great opportunity, and it helps. I suppose it charges my battery when I come back here about why I took on this role. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. All right, moving to 6.3, the Chairperson's update from the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board, which includes a report for March and April. No, Mr. Girling doesn't appear to be in the room. No. Okay. So just move that this report be received and noted. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor Alan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any items within those reports that anyone wishes to question or comment on? There being none. Oh, Councillor Horridipart.
Apologies. Just going back to the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board, there's reference in here, number 16, to a report, 884 pages report that was provided. Is it possible to get a copy of that report, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so we now move to 7.1, which is the adoption of the annual plan for 2025-26 and the fees and charges schedule for 25-26. Welcome Caro to the table while she gets herself ready. Can I move recommendations A, B, C and D, that the report and the fees and charges schedule be received, that this matter or decision is recognised as significant, that we receive the submissions made during consultation on the Food Act and resource management fees, and that Council thanks submitters for their time and acknowledges their submissions. Seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Welcome, Cara. Welcome, Jacinda.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, Council. I'll take the report as read, and Jacinta and I will make a couple of introductory comments. To get here today, there have been 4 workshops, the Capital Project Steering Group meeting considering the capital program, in consultation on the Food Act and Resource Management Act fees, in addition to the work throughout by officers on the budgets and material brought to those meetings. In December last year, Council made the decision not to consult on this annual plan as permitted by the local government legislation, given that this annual plan was closely following the budget and plan for Year 2 of the LTP 2024-2044, which was adopted in June 2024. Council did undertake statutory consultation on the Food Act and Resource Management fees and charges, and while no submissions were received in relation to those, 3 submissions were received in relation to the proposed fees and charges schedule. These submissions have been addressed in the report. The capital program we intend for the year has been outlined in workshops and is in the document. However, we may come back in September with a few final adjustments, capital carryovers, where we might not have been able to spend everything we thought we would this year and may need to carry it through to next year. Today is the second to last step on the journey for the preparation for Year 2 of the Long-Term Plan 2024-2044. Council is being asked to complete the final steps necessary to adopt the fees and charges for 25-26 and to adopt the annual plan 2025-26, which confirms the budget and direction for the year. When talking about rates and rates increases, the analogy of a pie is often used, that the size of the pie is the size of the rates income for the next year, and the slices of the pie are the average rate increases that ratepayers will pay. Today, Council is being asked to agree the size of the pie. On 25th of June, when the most up-to-date data on the number of rating units, valuation of rating units and new houses is received by Council, Council will strike the rates and the pie will be sliced up based on the total number of rating units at that date. I'll pass to Jacinta.
So what I wanted to reiterate today for the table is normally in an annual plan setting process we would have our best estimate of what the rates growth would be. Because we're setting the annual plan early, that's the key reason why we're adopting a total rates increase rather than the average rates increase at this stage, because we need to allow as much time as we can to get as accurate a picture of what the growth in the database is between now and the end of June. So when you set the rates at the end of June, you'll absolutely know what that number is. And we've done a lot of detailed work on it so far. But what we wanted to do today was give you an indication when you are setting the annual plan, is that the growth, when we set the growth number for the long-term plan, that household growth was expected to be 1.7%. As of today, it's currently looking like 1.05%. So while there is a significant amount of growth happening in the district, there are some sizable developments that are at the stage where they're not quite at completion, or the titles aren't expected to be issued on this side of the financial year. They're likely to come into the next financial year. So what that means from a ratepayer perspective is that the average increase for ratepayers will be higher than we had initially anticipated. In terms of providing information to our ratepayers so they can get an understanding of the impacts for them, following the adoption today, we will be releasing online the ability for people to go online and get an indication of what their rates increase is looking like. And that will be based on the 1.05% growth rather than the 1.7% growth. So in terms of finalizing the introduction today, just clarifying as well, the report presents for adoption the fees and charges schedule, the proposed annual plan, and also indicates in the resolution the total rates increase that you'll be adopting today.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Jacinta or Kara? Appear to be none. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I did want to ask a couple. So based on some of the submissions that we received and looking at some of the resolutions that we're going to adopt today, have they been further considered in this? Because it was about the rounding up, rounding down stuff. And I still feel like we're dabbling with cents. If I just look at one of the recommendations there to go from 570 to 560, why wouldn't we round it to 550, like the 210 to $2? So I'm just picking up on that. Is it too late to change what's been provided to us in the submission if there's been due consideration by the table?
I'm just going to refer to Brent for that one. Thank you, Brent.
Through your worship, thank you for the question, Councillor Tamihana. In respect to the 570 to 560, that was an error that was printed in the annual plan document. It should be $5.60 as per the Lavina Aquatic Centre fees. It was printed as $5.70 for Foxton. And in terms of the $2.10, that was in response to a submission regarding the entry into Shannon Pool. And that's primarily because we don't have an FPOS facility there. We deal more in cash, so the appropriate rounding down for that one. We don't see it as an issue so much at Foxton and Lavin with the cents rounding, because the majority of our customers pay by either concession cards or FPOS.
Thank you. All right, Councillor, so we will take these in bit sizes, and I'm going to do recommendation or move recommendations E and F first. The Council amends the Shannon Pool fee from $2.10 to $2, noting the different payment arrangement for Shannon Pool. And F, the Council amends the proposed Foxton Pool admission fee from $5.70 to $5.60 to be aligned with charges at Lavin Pool. Seconded by Councillor Olsen. Any discussion? Put that recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We now move to recommendation G. The Council updates the unapproved works, activities being taken without an approved WAP, which I've just found out means work access permit, or traffic management plan under corridor access requests from $1,545 to $1,500, due to this being the legislative maximum fine value. Moved by Councillor Brannigan, seconded by Councillor Grimstone. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation H. The Council, having taken into account the submissions received during the consultation on the Food Act and resource management fees and charges, that the schedule of fees and charges 2025/26 be adopted as operative fees and charges for the 2025/26 year, effective 1 July 2025, as shown in attachment 2. Moved by Councillor Olsen, seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation I. that Council approve that after considering the matters set out in section 100 in brackets 2A to D of the Local Government Act 2002, that the annual plan for 2025-26 does not have projected operating revenues at a level that is sufficient to meet projected operating expenses and balance the operating budget. This is in line with the financial strategy, and it is noted that the budget plan is to be balanced by 2027/28. Move Councillor Jennings, seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried. And then recommendation J, that Council adopts the annual plan 2025/2026 in accordance with section 95 of the Local Government Act 2002, attachment 3. Happy to move, seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation K, that the Chief Executive be given delegated authority to insert the after-growth percentage rates increase, the rating mechanisms and rating examples detailed into the annual plan 2025/26 after the rates are set on the 25th of June 2025, and to make editorial changes that arise as part of the publication process for the fees and charges schedule 2025-26 and the annual plan 2025-26. Moved by Councillor Jennings, seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And recommendation L, that the Council approve a total rates increase before growth for 2025-26 of 10.2%, which will result in a rates increase of 8.5 to 8.9% after growth. Is that still the recommendation following your...
Through your worship, my recommendation would be to not indicate the average one until we actually know what that is through the rating growth.
Okay, so that the Council approve a total rates increase before growth for 2025-2026 of 10.2%. That's the recommendation. Okay. Do we need to indicate that? No, we don't, because that'll come out in the June meeting, won't it? Right. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Grimstone, seconded by Councillor Brannigan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. I did want to make a quick comment around the fact that we have now adopted an annual plan because it seems to have, I think, sort of, gone past our view quite quickly this year, and may have thought that we haven't actually put much time into this annual plan as we had for the long-term plans of 2023 and 2024. But I think the reality, the work was done in those years. We had set the clear direction that we wanted to go, and now is the time that we've committed to that direction and continues to build on the work that we've done in the last couple of years. The challenges that we faced last year are still there, but the work that the organisation has done to make efficiency savings and to bring our water delivery services in-house means that we are able to reduce our projected rates increase while still continuing to deliver excellent service to our community. We are answering the call of the government and have been for some time now to get back to basics. This plan continues our focus on those basics. O2NL, local water services delivery, town centre. Our key projects do not contain any fluff or nice-to-haves. I think councillors can be satisfied that whatever happens in October, that you are leaving a solid, balanced and well-constructed platform to take the district forward in the ensuing years. I thank you for your support in adopting that annual plan. Okay, we're moving now to 7.2, which is the adoption of local waters combined bylaw. Before we adopt this bylaw, we do have to approve the hearing minutes into the local waters bylaw, which are on page 461, 9.4. And I would like just to get that recommendation passed, that the report of the Hearings and Regulatory Committee from the 15th of April 2025 and the minutes be received and noted. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, Allen, seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So we now have the adoption of the Local Waters Combined Bylaw. And Daniel, are you presenting this while Daniel comes to the table? Can I just move recommendation A and B, that the report be received and that this matter is recognised as significant? It's moved by Deputy Mayor Allen, seconded by Councillor Young. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Daniel.
Morning to Council. Just like to remind everyone that we've been through an extensive number of workshops in late 2024 and development of the bylaws, community engagement, public hearings process over the last 4 months. You've heard just earlier that the Regulatory Committee, through the hearings process, took account of a number of the changes suggested by submitters, and those have been taken into account. We're at a point today ready for adoption, so I would really like to acknowledge all of those that did submit, and also council officers that have contributed to this important piece of work to safeguard our facilities and environment. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions of Daniel? Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daniel, I have a question on behalf of a constituent. So in the meeting minutes for the Hearings and Regulatory Committee, the committee made a resolution. It was moved by Councillor Tamihana, seconded by me, and it was carried. And the resolution reads, with the exception of tankered waste, no person may discharge any trade waste in a way that causes that trade waste to be discharged off the premises to land or water outside the premises unless the activity is consented by the Regional Council. And the question is, what happens to tankered waste?
Simple terms, it ends up in a tanker. But I suppose in terms of our council's bylaw, we don't actually take ownership of that waste if it doesn't enter our network. So effectively it's transferring from the private property before discharging into a wastewater pipe. It's picked up into a tanker. Council provides facility at the Live-in Wastewater Treatment Plant to receive that as trade waste and charges accordingly. But that doesn't prevent the owner of that waste, the tanker operator, looking at alternative facilities in, say, Kapiti or Palmerston North. But in general terms, it's picked up by a tanker and discharged into the intake at the Live-in Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Could I just have a follow-up question? And so, based on your answer, so the options for in that situation would be either use the council facility to discharge that waste or use another compliant means of doing that. And so does our bylaw address or govern the private disposal of that waste, or is that subject to other legislation or regulatory requirements?
I'm not aware of trade waste being discharged at any other consented sites within the district. It wouldn't be governed by the bylaw. It would be absolutely a breach of environmental and Horizons regulatory standards, the One Plan, etc. If discharge was being done without a consent. So yeah, I would certainly encourage any constituents or members of the community concerned around that to approach either Horizons or HDC.
Thanks, Daniel. All right, so the recommendation in front of the table is that Council resolve to adopt the Local Waters Combined Bylaw 2025, attached as Attachment A, as an operative bylaw of Council effective 1 July 2025, and doing so determines that C1, a bylaw is still the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problems of regulating local water services, and C2, that the proposed bylaw is the most appropriate form of bylaw and does not give rise to implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990, C3, that the Horowhenua District Council Water Supply Bylaw 2020 is superseded and therefore revoked. And C4, that the Horowhenua District Council Trade Waste Bylaw 2015 is superseded and therefore revoked. Moved by Councillor Tamihana and seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. Any open for discussion or comments? Deputy Mayor Allen.
Just to speak to this, Mr. Mayor, and to give comfort to the public around this very important matter of water and the bylaw, that at the heart of the proposition of what we were dealing with was a recognition around the interdependence of those four waters. So the separation that existed prior to this had to be challenged. It was about having a more integrated approach. Good to have got 16 submissions, and I particularly want to thank the 3 who turned up to speak on the day. They absolutely added value to the process. The 4 amendments contained on page 177 essentially fall, I guess, under 2 headings. One was to add to the wording to protect and prevent damage to local waters, to add to that and the associated environment, which was a significant and important addition, and that was a direct result of the submission process. And the second sort of heading, I guess, was around having a more nuanced and fairer set of requirements for those who produce trade waste. And there were some good challenges to the process and helpful response from officers, so that I think we've ended up with a fairer and clearer system for those, for example, who produce trade waste but deal with it themselves, as one example of that. So could I thank those submitters? Could I acknowledge that 3 workshops, all public, all live streamed. It was a good open process, and I want to acknowledge my fellow panel members, you, Mayor Burney, along with Councillors Jennings and Tamihana, and also to note the impressive work done by Justine Moore in sort of doing the grunt behind that work. So with those statements, I fully support the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further commentary? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Just noting that Councillor Grimstone's had to leave the table for an urgent appointment and will be back when he can. We're now moving to 7.3. Never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. New parking restricting for Balance Street, Shannon. And Vi is coming to the table. Can I just move the recommendations A and B, that the report be received and recognised as not significant? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Vi.
Morena koutou, Your Worship, Councillors. This report before you this morning seeks Council's approval to install a 30-minute time-restricted parking space on the 1 car park in Balance Street, Shannon, outside the Moana Road store. This follows a direct approach from the store owner, who has raised concerns that the long-term parking, particularly by trucks, is limiting customer access and having an impact on their business's viability. The proposed is a practical, small, low-cost intervention designed to support that local business by improving the turnover in a high-demand spot. It's also consistent with our strategic goals of organisational excellence and responsiveness to communities' needs. Just to emphasise, this decision sits firmly within Council's powers under the Land Transport Bylaw, which gives you as elected members the authority to approve small parking changes through this resolution. Otherwise, take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vi. Any questions? Don't appear to be any. Oh, Councillor Tamihana.
I don't have a question, but I know that if the councillor sitting beside me was here, he did raise some questions, so it would be good maybe if we just had some feedback from those questions that were raised in this regard.
Yeah, so through Your Worship, the question from Councillor Grimstone was about whether we had consulted with other businesses, and I confirmed to Councillor Grimstone that we haven't. what was explained, and I'm sure Councillor Olsen will be happy to speak to this because I know in his advocacy position as Mitanoi Ward Councillor, he was initially made aware of the issue by a couple with a councillor, and then the community members concerned with this issue have continued to advocate by council officers, and it obviously fell outside of our most recent bylaw review, and so it kind of the concern came in outside of that bylaw review. That as councillors will have seen in the imagery that Councillor Olsen provided over email, really the big impact is on Moana Road itself. There are no businesses right next door to it that would be impacted by this.
Thanks. Another question?
Yeah, just subsequent from me though. I suppose I just want to ask our officers if there's any risk in us adopting this today, and is it setting a precedent throughout the district of potentially businesses approaching us, even landowners and private homeowners seeking some form of special treatment outside their house because the car's parking outside their house. So I'm just a bit worried about what we're setting here today, and because we didn't entertain a fuller consultation process with the Shannon community, not just the business, I do get concerned, given we put so much emphasis around consulting around Te Maire Park and the Shannon community plan stuff that we're doing. So it feels a little bit out of sync. So I just really wanted to have that noted and recorded today. Thanks.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you, Councillor Tamihana, for the question. So the question being, does it set a precedent? I think the Land Transport bylaw itself sets the framework to enable this decision-making process. Whether it should have gone out for consultation or not, the impact on the community for that one car park directly outside the Moana Road store was not considered to have a significant impact on the community. As each of the requests would come through to council officers or through to elected members, as listed as well, every one of those will be assessed on its own merits and what the circumstances around that are, and then the bylaw as itself sets the framework around sitting here today and having elected members make that decision. Kia ora.
Thanks, Fi. Thanks, Brent. Okay, so the recommendation is that Council adopt the amendment to Schedule 12 of the Land Transport Bylaw 2024 that includes the addition of a P30 parking restriction in Balance Street, Shannon, 18 metres from Plymouth Terrace, extending 12 metres in a southeasterly direction. Mr. Councillor Olsen, you're happy to move that, and seconded by Councillor Brannigan. Is there any debate, conversation around this issue? Councillor Olsen.
Just quickly, look, there's no shops. Even the next door neighbour shop is not tenanted at the moment, so there's no implication there. From what I can see, there's no there'll be no effect on any other businesses surrounding, and the building over the road is also not currently tenanted or operational as well.
Yes, noting that trucks do use that portion of the road, especially outside the toilets and to access the bakeries and things like that across the road, so that there is more room further up the street than they should be able to use without any issues at all. It's a busy intersection though, and part of the State Highway 57 network, as we well know. So, Councillor Tamihana.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to declare I'm not going to vote on this. I will abstain from the vote, citing the reasons I've raised around lack of consultation. It's not aligned with the community plan and vision as far as I'm aware. And so for those purposes, as much as I understand the need for that direct business, I am worried about the precedent it sets and potential exclusivity that it could actually offer through that process in time. So that's just me and my position.
So noted. Councillor Brannigan.
Just to provide a little bit of balance and respect Councillor Tamahana's view, but
This is no different than a number of requests that come through council, through councillors into our offices, and I highlight one that I've had recently from a business in Foxton, in terms of a fairly new business who's looking for some, through customer feedback, paraplegic parks outside, disability parks outside, that they've passed on to officers, and that's being currently looked at. So I see this as no different, and totally supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor.
I agree with Councillor Brannigan, and I think this shows that we're responding to the needs of our public, and as the officers have stated, this is a rather simple and easy fix for what our community is asking.
Thank you. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Noting Councillor Tamihana has abstained. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Boyle, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Oh,
sorry, it would help
even.
if your camera was on. Thank you.
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you. So I assume you did support that recommendation? Thank you.
Full support.
All right. Now moving to 7.4, the property strategy amendment for iwi first right of refusal. And while I know this topic has garnered some national attention in the last 24 hours or so, I just want to remind councillors of their code of conduct and their behaviour in terms of the respect that they show both the chambers and each other while we are discussing this issue. And so I would expect councillors to tolerate other people's views, that they will not interrupt, and that they will, if they're dissatisfied with those views of other councillors, they will not openly show that. We do have, we do need to be reminded at times of the code of conduct that we did subscribe all to at the beginning of the term, and hope that that continues through this debate. So Lacey is coming to the table to introduce the topic, and while she does so, I'll move recommendations A and B, that the report be received and recognised as not significant. Can I have seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Lacey. Thank you, Brent.
Kia ora koutou. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge and publicly apologise to our iwi partners who have participated thoroughly and openly with us on this kaupapa. I'm apologising for not directly letting them know ahead of today that this kaupapa was again on the agenda. This was an oversight and not my expectation on how we work together. The table first asked officers to look into this kaupapa in July 2023. Since that time, officers have been researching other councils and Crown entities that have similar policy or strategy and seeking feedback from iwi and hapu. We've spent a lot of time with councillors and ultimately had to follow advice of council for the scope of this work. I want to draw councillors' attention that should this amendment be adopted, it will become the default process for disposal of non-core property. And while it is noted in the report, should this amendment be adopted, a sentence will be added to the strategy that explicitly states this process will not be applied should there be an alternative resolution from council. Additionally, should council adopt the proposed amendment, 4A will be included into the matrix that outlines should there be more than one iwi or hapu interested in a property and cannot decide who should be purchasing it from council. The amendment outlines the property will then go on the open market, allowing for all interested parties to make an offer. At the last open workshop we held on this in March, councillors asked for officers to bring this to the table for decision. So here we are. Are there any questions?
Councillor Tamihana.
Thank you, Lacey, Brent, for the work here. Just one question from me is, I've noted the process that we're looking to to potentially adopt today, but does it align with our property strategy in terms of normal property disposal?
Through you, Your Worship, I might just need to seek clarity on the question, Councillor. And this would be in addition to the property strategy as an amendment, an appendix added. It would be the default process for disposal of non-core properties which have been decided by council as non-core, and as mentioned, this would be the default process, but there would be a process which council could decide to follow to dispose of properties in a different manner. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. I suppose if I draw your attention to our current policy, there's a couple of points I'm going to raise. So one is within our policy, we already acknowledge cultural. So within your feasibility factors of our property strategy, that vary. Hold on, I got the right one. Sorry, just bear with me because there's a whole lot here to read. So in the property strategy, in terms of how we would dispose of a property, it's a 5-step process. What's being purported here today is a 10, 11-step process. And I feel like it's not following the property strategy as we've already determined, because whether it's Māori land or general land or public land, land is land. And so I get a little bit perplexed when I see things here and what we're potentially adopting today, and probably understand why there may be some apprehension to what we're actually discussing here today, because it almost feels like we're setting up ourselves and iwi to not make agreement, and we wouldn't be able to progress some of our property processes because of the way we're framing it. And so I'll take you to page 267, 268, where there's this whole process around if iwi don't agree, where there's this whole process around who has more mana at place and how that would be determined. And I think they're actually barriers. They're not actually identifying opportunity.
So Tamihana, have you got a question for Lacey and Brent in regards
Well,
to this?
The question was, are we aligned to our property strategy? And I don't think we are. I think it's actually added a whole lot of things in here that actually aren't required.
So through Your Worship, the property strategy currently provides no provision for a mana whenua first rights of refusal process. What's before council for debate is adding a provision. So you are right, Councillor Tamihana, that the current property strategy is different to the process in front of you for consideration. The property disposal process outlined in the existing property strategy is still the disposal process, but what the appendix does is it outlines what the process would be if council was to exercise a process that gave first rights of refusal to mana whenua. So it's almost it's in addition. The second part of your question around because I think what I'm hearing from part of your question is the concern that it provides so many more additional steps to what is already in the property strategy, which is a 5-step process. Yes, there are additional steps, and those steps have been guided by the policy that elected members have fed into. And so at the last workshop, actually, not just the last council workshop, but the public council meeting in December 2024 and even December 2023 when we had that public council meeting, the concern around council becoming the decider or the chooser if both or multiple iwi wanted to purchase a piece of property council wanted clarity on how we would manage that. And actually, I think it was Councillor Proctor that suggested the mechanisms in the appendix that we have inserted for council consideration. So it was from councillors that this policy has been developed.
Deputy Mayor Allen. So this is a question around detail that was flagged in through an email process, and I am referring to page 267, number 4 in the process. Now, if there was an undertaking where there needs to be a 4A, could we have absolute clarity about that? It's referenced in the report, but it doesn't flow into the actual template. So, in public interest, can we make that clear, please?
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you for that opportunity to provide that clarity. You were right, as referenced in the council report, but not in the appendix. Should this be adopted, a 4A would be included, which would, outline that should there be more than one iwi or hapu interested in a property and a decision cannot be made between them, who should be purchasing it from council. The property will then go on the open market, allowing for all interested parties to make an offer.
Councillor Brannigan. Yeah, thanks, Lacey. Thank you, Richard. Lacey, so currently around our property strategy, as I understand it, when we have properties that we are now moving forward to dispose of through sale, that we already right now provide notification to our iwi partners that we're going to be putting certain property up for sale, so they're aware of that. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Brannigan. It's actually the step before that. So when council is considering disposal, whether a property is core or non-core, that is when we engage with our iwi partners on that decision-making process, and has been included in the council reports that come to council for a decision.
Just for clarity on that, that is before it goes anywhere near getting onto the market, so to speak. Our iwi partners get a heads up that this is the process we're going to go through. They have the ability to come back and signal any kind of interest in that property. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is a step within the decision making process where we talk with our iwi partners, and then at the end of last year, I believe, we have also sent a list to our iwi partners of what has already been decided by council as non-core property.
Chief Executive.
Yeah, through your worship, I do just want to clarify for the table that it has been some time since council adopted the property strategy and identified its core and non-core assets. And I'm not sure as officers we can give you confidence that that process of advising and engaging with iwi before the decision for assets to be identified as non-core occurred. That was back in 2010, 2011. I can't give you that assurance, Councillor.
So just in response to that, a simple revisit to the property strategy that could be added as a clear step in the current property strategy, that the consultation with our partners about any property coming up for sale could be part of that property strategy, so it firms that up and gives that clear direction.
That is certainly something that council could consider, just noting that the scope of this work was not to review the property strategy, it was to create an appendix that looked to provide a mana whenua first rights of refusal process.
Any further questions? All right, there being none, thank you, Lacey, thank you, Brent. So we have an either-or recommendation here in front of you. Is someone prepared to move and second either one of those. Oh, Rogan. Oh, sorry, Kessler Boyle. Apologies.
Yeah, happy to move. Recommendation C.
Thank you. Is there a
that we
seconder for
adopt
that?
the strategy.
A seconder, sorry. The seconder. C. Yes, there is. Recommendation C, that Council incorporates the proposed amendment to the property strategy allowing for iwi hapu to have first right of refusal for any non-core property that is to be disposed of. It's on page 252.
I second.
Sorry?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Horiyapa. So the motion C, recommendation C is on the table. And happy to hear councillors debate and talk on this. Councillor Boyle, do you wish, as the mover, wish to speak first?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'd love to. So today, councillors, we've got a pretty simple decision. Do we honour our obligations to Te Tiriti, or do we continue to uphold the colonial status quo? Some people have called this policy racist in the public media. Let me tell you what's really racist. Denying Mana Whenua's connection to this land, ignoring generations of dispossession and the findings of the Waitangi Tribunal, pretending that partnership means just listening and then going, nah. This amendment, it's not radical. It's the bare minimum of decency and fairness. It's what this council agreed to do when we requested this policy in 2023. 2 years later, we've had countless workshops, consultations, and we're still debating whether to enact that promise. The real racism is clearly documented in our history books. The confiscations, the broken promises, the stolen whenua. Our iwi partners have been clear. They want this policy. They want far more. They deserve far more, but this is the start. Today we get to choose. Do we take this small step towards justice, or do we just spit in their faces again? This policy couldn't be simpler. First right of refusal at full market value. No discounts, no special treatments, no cost additional to ratepayers. Full transparency at every step. Let's dispel the myths. It's too complicated. The process is clear. It'll slow down sales. It's 30 days. We'll lose money. Market value means market value. We're not ready. We've had 2 years. This isn't our problem. Council's the one administering this stolen land. That's the real irony here, that the same people who benefited from generations of privilege now claim that they're the victims of discrimination. So I ask all of you opposing this today, do you understand how many of the table have benefited from the land theft over generations? Where was your outrage when this land was taken? Where's your concern about the racism still in our system today? The truth is already written in our maps, in the missing place names, in the boundaries, in the very land we're talking about. Have you read the Tribunal's Tara Whenua report? It clearly calls the Crown's actions a shameful and sustained attack on Māori land rights. Today we choose, will we continue that attack, or do we begin to repair it? I say enough. Enough empty promises, enough performative consultations, not one more acre, no pretending we don't know better, enough stolen whenua. The time for talk is over. Vote for this amendment. Honour our word. Show some real leadership. Have the balls. Just get it done.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to speak against this motion, and a bit unusually for me, I'm choosing to speak quite early in the debate, and because I genuinely want to give my colleagues an opportunity to tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why you disagree with my position. And for me, this proposal is driven by ideology, identity politics, and it's not well considered or evidence-based policy. Let's be clear about what saying yes to this policy really means. If you say yes to this policy, you say to your community, we subscribe to race-based treatment. We accept privilege. We push preferential treatment as our default setting. If you say yes to this policy, you say, be damned with Bill of Rights, damned with the Human Rights Act. Discrimination is acceptable here because we've decided it's justified. If you say yes to this policy, you're saying forget about the Local Government Act and our obligation to ensure prudent stewardship, sound financial management. If you say yes, just ignore the long-term plan and our financial strategy we just adopted. We'll just make it up as we go along. And if you say yes to this policy, you're essentially saying you want a legacy of further division, undermine public confidence, and weaken the very principles of fairness and equity that we were elected to uphold. For me, the current property strategy is grounded in a pretty simple default principle. Council should always seek the highest possible return for ratepayers. That matters. Why does it matter? Because council is carrying significant debt. Paying that down is a key part of our financial strategy. And make no mistake, this decision does have a cost, even if it hasn't been quantified. And I've heard lots of elected members around this table say there is no cost, but choosing not to pay down debt to the greatest extent possible has real interest costs, which are ultimately funded through rates. If elected members claim that there is no financial impact, that is just simply wrong, and frankly, you're misleading your public. Some will say, but we're still selling at market rate. No, we're not. Evaluation is not a market rate. It's an informed estimate. It's a snapshot based on some assumptions, past data, and it can't account for what a willing buyer is willing to pay on an open or through an open competitive process. The only way to truly determine market rate is through a contestable, transparent process where buyers can bid and the price is discovered. That process is not about price, it's about fairness. Evaluation tells you what something might be worth, the market tells you what it is worth. And look, I'm not saying that council should never depart from that principle of maximum return. There are circumstances where absolutely other outcomes might justify it, but that should be the exception, not the rule. And we should absolutely have a policy, as we do now, that allows bespoke solutions where we can clearly demonstrate there's a greater good. And we've done it before. This council just last year decided to sell the Fox and Moore Memorial Hall to an iwi group for $1 to pursue certain outcomes. And then we've had other decisions where councils looked to sell land to Kaingaora at discounted prices to unlock social housing outcomes. We've done it before. And so what I'm saying is that we can achieve the spirit of what some are seeking here through this policy, and I think the origins of this policy proposal. And we can do it by simply, and I think we already have publishing a list openly of the surplus properties. And we can invite iwi, sports clubs, neighbours, tenants, anybody to tell us if they're interested in those properties. They can signal their interest in purchasing it, whether they have views on how the land should be used or the development outcomes, and even ideas about how we might dispose of the property. For example, through an expression of interest process, like we've done with other parcels of land. The point is that council can then weigh interests case by case and decide whether a departure from our usual approach to return a maximum amount is justified. That's how we've done it until now, and that works. And there will always be edge cases, parcels of land with historical cultural significance, or for example, some that were previously gifted, or where there's a compelling reason for special consideration. But let's treat those cases for what they are, the exception, not the rule. And for me, this policy proposal ultimately tries to oversimplify what is a complex issue. Our property portfolio is nuanced. This change will lead to unintended consequences, I think some perverse outcomes, and in time, councillors are going to just look for ways to opt out or override this policy just to make it work in practice. And that's going to lead to worse financial outcomes and less transparency. For me, good ideas don't take almost 2 years to stumble towards a decision, as this has. The delay alone is proof that this policy is flawed, divisive, and unworkable. I oppose this policy not because I oppose iwi, not because I oppose engagement, but because this is poor policy built on ideology, not evidence, and because I think we owe our ratepayers something better. Like my colleagues, don't vote for division dressed up as policy. Don't be a financial vandal. And vote for fairness and transparency, and the people who ultimately pay our bills, our ratepayers. And finally, I just want to respond to something that Councillor Boyle said, because he said he referenced council's obligations to iwi under the treaty. Councillor Boyle is misinformed and misunderstands our obligations. In fact, there was a recent High Court case that has just confirmed that local authorities do not carry the Crown's treaty duties other than where they are statutorily prescribed. So that is the Local Government Act and other pieces of legislation tell us what obligations we have to iwi. And so to suggest that this policy is grounded in an obligation under the treaty is simply legally incorrect. Thanks.
Councillor Barker. I'll keep it simple and I'll be brief. We'll give this group a right and that group won't have it. That's divisive, and when the criteria for that division is race, it's racist. That is simple rationality. Now, we hear a lot about righting wrongs from the past, but as Councillor Jennings has pointed out, that's not our role. Well, this is plainly divisive and racist policy, and I will never support it.
You can't all be last. Yep. Well, is there anyone else that wishes to speak before I ask Councillor Boyle to give us right of reply? Oh, Councillor Proctor, sorry. Yep.
Thanks. It's very hard to respond to Councillor Jennings, who conflates so many issues with what I consider as such a very minor and benign step in a process which is very convoluted and complex. Councillor Jennings always talks about how it's going to be the end of the world, and every decision we make around what could be considered a race-based issue is going to result in poor financial outcomes. But really, for me, this process is just another step providing transparency and certainty around our property disposal process. And it's simply providing a mechanism for better engagement. It's not about providing extra rights. We already have to provide those rights to consult with Mana Whenua and iwi across our district anyway. All this does is make sure that we hold the council and its officers accountable to a process of consultation and involving iwi at a greater level in a process of property disposal. It's still market value. You can argue about what that might be worth at the end of the day and whether it was a good deal or not. But let's face it, councils always do make poor decisions when it comes to financial recommendations around selling property, as Councillor Jennings already pointed out, around selling a War Memorial Hall for $1 anyway. But to get back on track, I have to disagree completely with Councillor Jennings and Councillor Barker saying that this is a racist, divisive policy. In my view, it just again provides a transparent and certain mechanism to involve iwi at a greater level in our core business.
Councillor Tamihana.
It seems that not too many want to share their thoughts. Tūtai mea ana kia koutou ngā iwi ko tai mai nei, raro te tūnei o tēnei whare, mea ana kia koutou ko tai mai nei. So just want to acknowledge those iwi members that are present in the gallery today, that have been part of this journey perhaps or perhaps not, but this is definitely about you guys and how council can aspire to show some leadership around this type of kaupapa. You're going to have to bear with me because I got a little bit. And I'll restate it again, and Deputy Mayor Allen can say what he likes, but the reality of is it felt targeted today. It felt targeted that only Māori ward councillors were called out to seek advice that this council sought from legal because of potential conflicts because I'm Māori. So I want that recorded because that is divisive in itself. I'm an elected member appointed by my community. This is not the first time this policy's been here. This is the third time. This is a policy. It's not an operational matter. It's about aligning a policy and give opportunity within a property strategy. The property strategy was done in 2015, and as we've already heard from Councillor Brannigan, obviously the policy needs to be reviewed and updated. Some of the things we talked about today are historical things. I also want to just touch on quickly around media. It wasn't easy listening to what was shared in the media by my fellow councillors when we weren't even afforded the respect of being told that they were going to go public with such an inflaming matter. And I suppose that's sort of a sentiment about how this table's operating today. There are only 3 Māori in this council today with the loss of Pirihira. The whole intent of this was to act in good faith with our iwi partners. The historical lens of this actually started way back before I was even at this table, when iwi simply wanted to understand the council property disposal process. They wanted to understand how we determine core and non-core property for this council. And I've already seen in my short time here, that property that had been deemed non-core potentially becoming core. And there's many of examples of it where previous councils have determined something and have had to change. Hokio Beach Road is a prime example with our depot, and we were going to dispose of it, and then we realised actually it was an asset we couldn't let go of, and that's not the only one, there are many. The other thing that's a little bit hurtful is that I still today have to sit here and look at families that sit on land that was confiscated by their tupuna. Whether that was for roading, reserves, hospitals, schools, parks, whether that was for Queen's chains or waterways and tributaries. Even my ancestors that fought in the war were having land stripped from them while they were dying in the ditches with our Pākehā colleagues, only to come home and find their land had been taken from them. Classed as abandoning their whenua while they were fighting and taking up arms for your country. These are not myths, these are real. So the sense of loss is real, and many families are still living under the trauma of what occurred in those times. And this council actually has an opportunity to acknowledge that ongoing trauma and that ongoing disconnection from their land. Whether they own that land outright today or whether they see a spiritual connection to land is actually irrelevant in the conversation we're having here today. The conversation we're having here today is about an opportunity for iwi to determine if they have an interest in land or property. I don't need to be told the history of the land. What I know is that the land we hold at some point in time was taken from Māori. I don't need to be told I have to wait for a treaty settlement process to acknowledge our relationship and our partnership with key partners in our district. In fact, it's inappropriate. You talked about the Foxton War Memorial Hall. An incomplete process, to my understanding. Still working on it. What was the aspiration behind that? Community saw loss. Community saw disconnection of a critical piece of whenua that they grew up believing was important and should be championed. And the real reason behind why the community supported the hapu in that process was because it was about retention. It was about retention of land and assets that belong to our community. It's about preservation of gifts. Gifts that this district have received in the past by people who have donated land, assets, and even rights to a degree, that this council are meant to nurture, sustain, and maintain. Yet here we go off on this tangent of disposing. Why are we disposing? Because we hadn't been paying.
Councillor Tamihana, you've well over time, so can I just ask that
fine.
you just...
I'll get there.
Yeah, well,
Not
I
paying
need to be fair to
depreciation.
everyone.
Not collecting development contributions, debt ballooning, and all of this cost is on ratepayers and taxpayers. We're the same people. Council changes its mind all the time, reprioritises itself, determines that something's more important than another, so they reallocate funds and they reallocate capital works because that's what's required at the time. Even when I look at the property strategy in there and I've disclosed the 5-step, 6-step process, I think that the process that we were adopting today still needs tidying up. I don't agree the way that it's been framed. It should have been aligned with the property strategy. So if anything, I think there's an opportunity for this council not to be brave, but in the words of Councillor Boyle, honour what hasn't been honoured, and actually take the time to sit down and listen and work with your iwi partners, because right now they are looking for help. Right now they are looking for opportunity, and I think this council absolutely should lean into that. And I know Bernie's asking for my time, but we've got partnership arrangements that need to be honoured. We have treaty obligations that need to be honoured. And I think that by not adopting this policy today is another display of this council's tokenistic relationship that we hold with iwi partners and an expectation that we don't reciprocate. And I would be fearful that this policy isn't adopted today, but if it isn't adopted today, then I think a subsequent motion should be considered, that a full review of the Property Strategy 2015 occur under urgency to ensure that the policy that we are discussing right now is included and framed within our overall property strategy. But I don't even want to move to that because I think there's an opportunity to adopt this policy today, and it should form part of that review of the overall property strategy. I don't know what people are fearing here. I think Councillor Boyle framed it extremely well, that this is not giving away land. This is not asking for special treatment. This is not asking for us to pay a different price to what you're going to put on an open market, but this has actually been upfront with our iwi partners and giving them an opportunity and acknowledging that this Crown have already acknowledged the breaches in this district and across this country. And if you don't think those same things are coming here, then you don't know the process. But this government will acknowledge the breaches of these iwi. They will acknowledge the damage and the harm that's occurred to our whānau hapu and iwi across this area, and they will acknowledge that this council are going to have to do better, and all of this is recorded. So I'm grateful that it's open, I'm grateful it's the third reading, but I do encourage my fellow councillors today not to be brave, but just do the right thing, and don't fear what you're in control of. You're in control of it. Kia ora.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Allen.
So picking up on the encouraging fellow councillors, that last point made by Councillor Tamihana, this is a matter of significant public interest. whether it's quantitatively so, whether there's hundreds interested, or whether it's just that those who are interested are very interested and it matters a lot to them, I think it behoves each member of this table not just to exercise their vote, and please don't abstain. The vote payers did not elect you in order to not make decisions on matters like this. Please have a view, but also my challenge is express your view. It might be 30 seconds, but be accountable on this issue. It's one, Mr. Mayor, that I have struggled over. Normally I'm pretty on the ball when it comes to making a decision, but this one I have genuinely struggled over. I just want to put on the record, because there has been misinformation, probably unintended, but misinformation out there about the secrecy around this process and about how the public have been excluded. And I just want to underline the point, there has not been. While the initial decision happened in committee for commercial sensitivity reasons, it came up as an addendum, the motion at that stage was simply, let's look at the issue. No predetermined about what happened. Subsequent to that, we had very public accountability sessions, both in terms of 2 council meetings on the agenda, open to the public, and also those in December of 23 and 24, and then the public workshop in March. So this has been open for the public who wanted to engage with it. Mr. Mayor, to me, I have been tempted in the past about you don't know the value of something till you put it on the open market. I know that as an argument. I respect that point. It was made by Councillor Jennings. But when we look at the rubric, when we look at the process outlined earlier in terms of what this addendum would do, it's a pretty robust process. It's a 3-step process where there is market valuation by council, first right of refusal, then it can be challenged by iwi hapu, who can get their own valuation. If that fails, then by agreement there can be a 3rd independent valuation. That to me feels pretty robust. It feels pretty robust as a process. Of course, though, the other side of that argument is the what ifs. What does it feel like to those people who are not iwi hapu, who may have a very strong interest in the particular item up for sale? So for me, what it comes down to at the end of the day is I believe debt reduction can occur pretty well as usual, because debt reduction is absolutely front of mind, and it should be. It can occur pretty well under that process. So for me, it's about what signal does my vote give to iwi hapu in terms of where I sit on this issue. And the word racism has been used a couple of times, and I want to make a clear statement on that. When we're talking about racism, we are talking about history. We're not talking about this recommendation. Let's spell racism in bold letters, capital letters, and underline it, because that is the history of the land confiscation that happened to iwi Māori in the past. That's racism. This thing is about saying, can we, in a win-win situation, engage with iwi hapu, give a first right of refusal, while at the same time maintaining the ability to face the public and say, cost reduction is still front of mind, and here's a process where we feel we can do that. So at the end of the day, Mr. Mayor, have sat on it, have deliberated on it, but I will be supporting this recommendation.
It's always a danger following the Deputy Mayor after he's spoken so eloquently, and as he always does, regardless of his stance on the issue. But look, I think it's really unfortunate that this topic has been elevated to the height of discussion that it is, attention that it's got over the last 24 hours. It's unfortunate that I think the intent of the policy has been sidelined, and that it's become a discussion about a range of other matters, including money, racism, all sorts of different things. And like any topic, and I acknowledge the comments made by the Deputy Mayor about the fors and against of such a policy such as this. I too wrote down both sides of the argument in terms of where I thought I might sit on this. For me, though, this is about partnership, relationships, and engagement, and it's fundamental to us as governors that we try to make those relationships better for all. And I remind the table of our top priorities. We have a laminated sheet in front of us that says that we will uphold Te Tiriti Wātangi and its principles and recognise the role of mana whenua as kaitiaki of their rohi. This is a document that we all adopted when we became members of this table. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we are following those priorities. And there have been examples where this partnership has been enhanced before. And I particularly think of the relationship with the Horowhenua Company and Kāinga Ora. The precedents have been set. This is not a race issue. This is about developing partnerships and agreements with our stakeholders. So ultimately, does the policy strengthen and enhance partnership, relationships and engagement? In my view, yes, it does. In fact, it provides more clarity and understanding of what the expectations are and gives council much more control over those expectations. We're often criticised for not hearing or engaging with our iwi hapu partners about different issues, and often get criticised later on near where decisions are being made that we haven't engaged properly. This policy sets guidelines and a framework where expectations will be enable council and its partners to ensure that our efforts to ensure good decision making are reinforced. So I too will be supporting this policy.
Councillor Brannigan. Thank you, Bishop. I too have thought long and hard about this one, and the reason I haven't spoken yet is I simply wanted to hear most of the debate to help firm my views. And where I've landed on that is that I won't support this policy. Briefly for a few quick reasons, and listening to Councillor Tamahana, Kororo was helped me make this, some of his points actually helped me make this view by a few of the things he said. On balance, I'm not supporting it. I think that because I do look at that the policy that the CAP officers have developed, and I feel for them because they've grappled with this for 2 years now, from the time it was first brought to this table. And let's make clear that it wasn't brought to this table by iwi. It wasn't brought to this table by the community. It was brought to this table by a couple of councillors who, through their ideological values or whatever it might be, thought this was a great idea. In fact, the input to this policy around the council table by iwi hapu has actually been pretty light. I'm surprised that there's not being spoken to in the public participation today to help try and convince us. And I wonder why that is. For me, the settings currently are just not right. The policy is simply not right. And you hear my questioning earlier of officers in the CE around the property strategy and the role the property strategy can play in achieving what I think that we want to achieve. And Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the values on here. Absolutely. We all relate to those and support those because we supported them in their development. But that doesn't mean out of that we will support every little thing that comes along. There has to be a balanced view. And I've tried to balance my views in terms of everything that we've worked on in this policy for the last couple of years, this proposal for the last couple of years. And it's a difficult one. But for me, just currently the settings are not right, the policy is not right. I think there's a better way through the property strategy. And I think if this doesn't go through today, I'll be asking us to review the property strategy to put a stronger component of consulting with iwi hapu when property comes to for sale or is looking to proceed towards sale. And we heard from officers, we currently do that. We already do that. But iwi hapu get the opportunity to understand before anybody else that these properties are coming up and have their right, have the ability to talk to council officers about their interest in those. So for me, that's where it currently sits. Appreciate all of yous, and all of yous are correct, apart from a few things Councillor Boyle said, which I won't touch on, but he is misinformed in my view. I will not support it, but again would support a strengthening of the property strategy to incorporate some of the values in this.
Councillor Ross. Cool. There's probably been a lot said, and I think obviously there's two sides of the coin, if you like. I've been pretty torn around this. I've heard from some of my members of the community around their views and tried to align that with I suppose the debate here today. I've always been quite sort of positive towards a contestable, transparent process to enable that value. Obviously, we represent our ratepayers, and I think we've got to do the most, to gain the higher value, so we can obviously pay down debt, which is paramount. I would have probably liked to see more sort of community consultation around this subject matter. I think it's a pretty large policy if we actually go into a review of the policy strategy, and I think we could have incorporated that into such a sort of consultation process. I was quite pleased, I suppose, of officers hearing that the community property disposal list does actually go out, and I think if we could review this in a bit more depth, I think that would enable that sort of feeding that information into EU and HAPU to gain that opportunity, so we could get that feedback directly. So yeah, I'm pretty torn on the actual outcome today, but I'll leave that for voting.
Councillor Young. Hi, thank you all for speaking. Appreciate everyone for their views, especially those with the posts and everyone else posting, because it's really helped me to make my decision. I was originally, definitely for the partnerships and the collaboration, because I was pretty sure on my decision. But I thank my colleague Sam for making me think. You made a really good points about, we are responsible to our ratepayer. But then Deputy Mayor Ellen, I love a win-win. I love a win-win. I love working together with our community, and just from the feedback from everyone, it's important to absorb everyone's views. I've also loved the debate. I love, all the public conversation. And last night it was a quiz night, and I even quizzed everyone else there. I needed them more feedback. And based on all that, I will be supporting it.
Councillor Grimsey. We can almost get to voting, I think. Look, I came here today to listen to the debate around the table because I had a view and a leaning, but I left my mind open to hear why not to support. So I came here being open to being convinced not to support this policy. Look, in nothing that I've heard today has influenced or changed my mind around my policy reset or my view around how I think this policy should go forward. Picking up on a couple of points raised so far, the delay of this policy has nothing to do with the complexity of the scenario. This policy was reworked by officers, they received feedback, they went away, they fed it again, and it just talks to the fact that it got left on the table because from a political sense around this table there just potentially wasn't the numbers to progress it as it is. So the policy we're looking to adopt today, in my view, isn't too significantly different to when we've considered in other public avenues. I think that what this does is it does talk in a meaningful way around not what partnership is in theory. It provides the process and the consistency that is required for partnership in practice and in reality. And that process and consistency is about this council and future councils acting in a consistent way forward. We've heard a little bit about the historical context, and when we make decisions we have to take into account historical context.
we also need to take into account the current New Zealand context that we live in as well. And I feel that this policy does support a clear intent from Council to act in partnership. I accept that there are nuances in relation to specific properties, but within this policy, and pointing out to point 26 and 27, there are options for Council to choose to follow other methods of disposal of property on an as appropriate method. So one of the things that I haven't heard today, and I've heard about risk, and we need to be prudent financial managers, and I get that. And I'm sure this council and future councils, when they make their decisions, will take that into consideration. What I haven't heard today is the opportunity that comes from working with our iwi partners, and the opportunity that comes with the position that they are going to hold in a future New Zealand, and their ability to contribute more effectively to the economic benefit of our town and our district. Because right now, pre-settlement, they are potentially, arguably, and pointing out I have no access to their current financial position, but I'm going to make an assumption here that given we're pre-settlement, they do not have the financial capability to potentially fully leverage this opportunity as it sits right now on the table. But in not too many years from now, around a different table, they will be in a different financial position, and that will provide a significant opportunity to the betterment of all the ratepayers of our district. And for this purpose, I've heard nothing to change the view that I came into this debate chamber for, and so I will support this.
Councillor Hori Tapar, yes, you are the last if you wish to speak.
Kia ora. There's not a lot more to add. It's all been said. Appreciate the sentiments that everyone has shared for and against. For myself, I too struggled with it, knowing that there would be pushback as to why this would be agreed. Councillor Grimstone summed it up for me. This didn't take 2 years to get here because it was hard. Because it was easy. We took our time, we deliberated over it, just like good governors should. Take our time and be considerate of our community and the future. One of the things for me that really that stuck with me is around our current lessees and their first right of refusal. What was the difference other than iwi? Obviously, they've got a lease to start with, but just giving the same opportunities. But yeah, today, if this does get through, it will be a proud moment. So, kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Boyle, do you wish to have a right of reply?
Yeah, just a quick one on a few points. Sam said this was identity politics. This isn't identity politics. It's honouring documented history. This has been thoroughly documented by the Waitangi Tribunal as fraudulently stolen land. Offering first right of refusal isn't special treatment. It's just allowing iwi to buy back at market rates what was taken illegally. It's not division. It's a tiny concession towards justice. In terms of the market value argument, this is just a red herring. Registered valuations are the benchmark we use for all council property sales. We trust them for ratepayers. We trust them for developers. Some of the people speaking against them today have been strongly in favour of them for developers in the past. Yeah, we could have a public list of sales. That wouldn't resolve the problem. It's funny to hear the twist about council's treaty obligations and my lack of legal knowledge of them. You confirmed we're obliged to follow the Local Government Act. Section 14 of this specifically requires us to provide opportunities for Māori to contribute to decision-making. Case law over the last 30 years has been very clear that this requires more than just listening to them. This requires active partnership, especially on things like land. On divisiveness, what of this is divisive? Voting to keep stolen land in council hands, calling Māori racist for wanting to buy it back at full price, ignoring the 30-year-old findings about this land. The only race-based here policy is the one that was implemented by our predecessors when they confiscated the Horowhenua block and told Māori, I'm going to leave this one here. I could go on for a while. I've been pleased and impressed by some of my councillors around the table today, and I hope we get to see this one go through.
Thank you. All right, so we will call for a division on this item, and I'm sorry, but this is in alphabetical order, and we'll follow the list to make it easier for Grayson to acknowledge. So, Deputy Mayor Allen, sorry, just reminding people what they're voting for. The recommendation is that Council incorporates the proposed amendment to the property strategy, allowing for iwi hapu to have first right of refusal for any non-core property that is to be disposed of. Deputy Mayor.
In favour?
Councillor Jennings.
Against.
Sorry, let's go to, you're right? Okay, Councillor Grimstone.
Aye.
Councillor Tamihana.
Aye.
Councillor Hori Pa.
Aye.
Councillor Young.
Yes.
Councillor Proctor.
For.
Councillor Barker.
Neither.
Councillor Olsen.
For.
Councillor Brannigan.
Against.
And I am voting for. Councillor Boyle.
I'll vote for as well.
Yes.
Yeah, for.
Thank you.
So that's 9-4-3 against.
So the motion's carried, 9-4-3 against. And thank you all for the tone of that debate and acknowledge everybody's views and opinions. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle.
Thank you. Thank you for your presence here today. It's now afternoon, so appreciate that. Yeah, it's great that you are here and interested in what we are talking about. I'm conscious of the time, but I would like to get the next couple of items out of the way before we... Kevin? Oh, okay. All right, so I've had a request for a 5-minute break, but let's not... I assume lunch is out there as well, though, is there? Yeah, okay, so we might break for Welcome back, everybody. And just making sure that Councillor Boyle, you are still with us. Thank you.
Still here.
Excellent. So we're now moving to item number 7.5, which is on page 293, the adoption of policy for responding to external consultants. And while Kari comes to the table, can I just move recommendations A and B, the receipt of the report and the matter recognised as not significant, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council. This draft policy for responding to external consultations is presented in response to Council's request that such a policy be developed about responding to external consultations. The aim is to provide a clear and consistent approach to guide officers and to be able to provide more certainty to elected members about what they will receive when. A reasonably steady stream of legislative and policy direction reform has been signalled to come out of government throughout 2025 and beyond. Having a defined policy can help manage expectations and also save time rather than having to establish which process will be followed on a case-by-case basis. The proposed policy presented today has sought to incorporate feedback from elected members, and the report presents the updated policy for adoption. I'll take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Karen?
Sorry, Your Worship. So just to confirm to Council that you should refer to your email that you received yesterday afternoon that included the table that was always intended to be included. That was just an oversight on my behalf. Thank you.
Councillor Jennings.
Weird question, sorry, or commentary? Oh.
Yes? No, right. Thank you, Karen. There appear to be none.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Wanden. I did want to ask a question. It was actually about the types of submission and whether we're still able to make amendments to that today before we adopt, or do I do that in the next part? Next part, okay.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for your work on this as well. Yeah, it's much more clear and concise. Thank you. So the recommendation is that Council adopt the policy for responding to external submissions included as attachment 1. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
So I was going to move it, but Councillor Tamihana's signalled that there might be some change that he wants to make. So I'll hold back, but I was going to move it, but just seek advice from the Chief Executive to clarify it's the version that's was emailed to us as opposed to the one that appears in the document, in the agenda. Sorry, but I'll give Councillor Tamihana the chance to raise what he wants.
So you've indicated to move an amendment?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Bernie. It was regarding page 300, type of submissions, and bullet point 2, where submission will support a majority of council, noting some council members do not support this, whether named or not is for councillors to determine at that time. I wanted to know whether actually it could also include if those councillors chose to have their main issues of disagreement recorded in that process. That was all, because it didn't allow for that, I don't feel, and just wondered if that could be considered.
Yeah, I think through you, Worship, I think that I was just trying to think about how we could word that. I think we could expand bullet point 2 to capture that sentiment, which is whether named or not, including rationale, is for councillors to determine at the time. So just for councillors' benefit, how I read that is councillors are debating something, 5 of you support, that's a bad example, 7 of you support, 4 of you don't, that we could say in that submission that councillors A, B, C, D did not agree, and they didn't agree because of this. But it's not saying that by rule that would be included, it's just giving councillors an option to, I suppose you could argue, depart from collective responsibility as a principle.
Councillor Brennan.
Some clarity around that. Any submission that council would make, presuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would have been through the council process. So we'd vote whether to make a submission or not, and then that rationale would be not captured in the minutes as such, but certainly captured in the recording. So I'm not sure what would want to be put in there. And then if it is, it should be at the acceptance of those particular councillors, I guess. But help me if I'm wrong.
Well, I just refer you to page 6 of the policy, which has the governance, involvement and approval pathway, and that does present times whereby it might not go through a formal council process. We follow this pathway instead.
And as we know, generally in submissions, there's never going to be complete approval of a submission. There will always be some who may hold a different view. So this just is allowing for that different view to be put there as well, I suppose. But, yeah. Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, what I think, just in response to Councillor Tamihana's point, I get the sentiment and I agree with it, because there will be occasions when, as a table, especially in those finely balanced votes, where some elected members may say, well, the submission should also record or aggregate the views of the other views of it, and so I'm wondering whether the policy could expressly reference that, or maybe the pathway is to acknowledge that it's simply a councillor or an elected member may make a resolution to request that the submission includes those contrary views or those or details of the vote or something to that effect, and I think that might have the same effect, acknowledging that there will be some pathways where governance isn't involved, but they will be generally the non-contentious issues. So, on that basis, can I move the original recommendation, but on the basis that there will be a small tweak to reflect the sentiment expressed, if everyone's comfortable with that?
I mean, the very reason that this recommendation is here is because we've had a number of occasions where there has been some contentious debates and arguments as to how we should submit and what we should submit. So this is trying to provide that clarity and ease of making sure that we understand the process and how it will work.
Right?
Yeah, I don't want to interfere in the decision-making process, because I think happy with all of that. The only comment I want to make, and it shouldn't impact the decision, it's more just so that I can reference this comment in future time, is there will be instances where my advice to you is that doing that will water down your advocacy position. So have it as an option, but also acknowledge that there'll be times where I'll say you can do that, but if you really care about this, then the government might not take notice of you if you're going to tell them that you're split.
No, and I appreciate that too, because that's certainly not the intent, but I think like where there's matters where perhaps there's true alignment by the opposers as such that is relevant to that submission, I think there's no detraction of just raising it to the appropriate party to say that while the council fully support the submission and this, but these were some of the critical points that required further discussion and thought. So.
Are you comfortable if we do not include then the necessary tweaks that, on hearing the discussion that's that we give delegation to the Chief Executive to make that tweak?
I've noted in the minutes.
No, it's been noted in the minutes. Okay. But what I'm suggesting is that the council adopt the policy. The recommendation is stated there, and just the understanding that that tweak will be made to the actual policy.
And I think it could just be framed as it is acknowledged that council may elect to make an additional resolution for a submission to include
contrary view,
dissenting views or something.
Yeah.
So it just acknowledges the possibility. It still requires a decision to actually be made at the council table. So you might have contrary view.
It's semantics a little bit, I guess. But if I liken it to council decisions, we have the mantle, or in council, the last debate we've just had was a classic example that there's clearly some councillors who didn't support that resolution. But now it's been made, we all own that. We all own that decision, and we do. I'm not sure everyone else around the table owns that decision as well. I'm not sure why we'd want to make that. My next word's about you can impact on the weight of your submission by clearly writing in there that it's not supported by all councillors. If the majority of councillors supported a submission, we should all own it. I'm not sure why we'd want to separate that, but it's just my views, and I'm happy to move on.
I think all this change does is it provides it as an option, and I would draw council's attention to the submission to the Water Services Bill back in 2022, and then also the Māori Ward legislation of 23-22. In both instances, there were contrary views, and we didn't say who had the contrary views, but we did list in our submission that it should be acknowledged. So, council have done it before.
Okay, so Councillor Jennings, you're happy to move recommendation C on the understanding of the discussion that's been had and been recorded. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any further debate or discussion on that? Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, thanks. You know that I've struggled with the process around the council doing submissions and being the instigator of many arguments in the last couple of years. While the policy still provides some level of certainty around the process that this council will go through, my opinion is still very much that this is an operational matter and we should leave all submissions up to the staff to put together, draft and submit. And that should be it. They should be submitting on core business in relation to the impact of whatever's being proposed in legislation as well. I don't think we should use it as an opportunity to push political views and aspirations, otherwise we tie ourselves up in knots as we have done in the past. So I'm not sure whether I'll support this or not.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
I just have to point out Councillor Proctor's slight change in approach here, because that's certainly not the messaging that was conveyed during the Treaty Principles Bill submission debate. But we won't rehash that. I will say, I think that the policy is a good framework for us to use, and yes, it does allow for flexibility. It allows for some different pathways, and I think it actually does pick up on Councillor Proctor's point, which is that there is a clear pathway where the submission is of an operational nature. It doesn't need to come up to council, but I just wanted to also thank Caro and the team for incorporating some of the feedback through the process, and I think where we've landed is a really good base for us to operate from, and should, fingers crossed, remove any further need to debate the process or the process steps, and so that the focus and attention can be on the content and what we actually, the content of our submission. So thanks to the team.
Thank you. So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving to 7.6, which is the district-wide water meter project update and delegation. And while Daniel's coming to the table, the report recommends that the report be received and that this matter is recognised as not significant. Daniel, I also made a request through Grayson that we just make clear in the recommendation C from 2, so that there is no confusion about where we've come from and where we're going to in terms of that budget. And it is stipulated in the report, but the recommendation doesn't really cover that. And I was just wanting to make sure that there was no confusion in terms of, where we've come from and where we're going to.
Yeah, that certainly fair comment around that. I'll cover off a little bit more background and context of the budget with the from and to, and we can settle on an appropriate resolution. So I'm joined here today with Jeremy, our local waters business and operations manager. He'll talk a little bit more detail around the project review we've undertaken, but I did want to start by highlighting the fact that the outcomes sought by the project are very much on track. So we've had a 40% saving on water. So that's water that we no longer take from the Awa that can be sustained there for the purposes of sustaining life within the Awa. 30% in Foxton, and we're tracking really well for meeting our targets in Levin also. Today's focus is around a change and shift for implementation. As we move past implementation, there'll be an in-depth project review that we'll undertake, and we'll put some actual numbers on the benefits in terms of cost savings, but also the water savings as we start to look to the future around further options for rating and charging. And the reason why we're looking to do a lot of work in that space is so that we can actually share that with neighbouring and other interested councils who haven't embarked on this journey. So a lot of really good progress. So outcomes for the project aren't at risk. So really, getting back to the kaupapa of today, very much focused on implementation. When we had the project approved, we were in a really early stages of project development. We got delegation for $5.5 million. That was to enable early purchase of materials which were coming in containers from overseas. At that point in time, the overall project budget was $6.46 million. The delta between the two was made up of what we assumed to be the cost for in-house delivery of a lot of the connections and upgrades. And we got to a certain point in the project that we thought we needed to rethink our approach. And I'll let Jeremy just give a brief overview of that and take any questions around the report.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Worship and councillors. Approximately 3 to 4 months ago, while I was receiving my regular reports on the project, it was identified that we were seeing scope creep, and that was going to have a financial knock-on effect. Primarily, this was, from what I could see, was to do with the amount of resourcing we'd put into this project from day one, and unfortunately, we were not achieving our productivities in the field. At which point I sat down with the project team and we did a review with respect to the best methodology for delivery, and identified that we should look into outsourcing third-party delivery, as well as potentially increasing internal staff to try and uplift their productivity. The outcome was that the proposal gave us the opportunity to go for an outsourcing model. We've been working with 3 companies, and we adopted a trial for 2 weeks to see what productivities we could achieve and what that would do to the project. Based on that trial, it was identified that we could increase the productivities around 400% from what we were doing originally, which then reduced the program overrun and then reduced the financials to the point that we were able to bring it in within 2 to 3% of the original budget. Upon that review, we also noted that we were incurring additional risk by managing third-party contractors, and we looked at our risk profile, amended that, and then within this price we've put in a $100,000 contingency for potential contractor overrun. What we've seen over the last few weeks, as we've only just had those crews on the ground, we now have 4 to 5 crews, including the maintenance work that we need to do on our existing infrastructure, and that we are achieving high productivity and throughput, which is now bringing the project back to an indicative finish by the end of this year, where it was being pushed out another 12 months if we carried on the way we were.
Just wanted to further highlight that it has been through the procurement review group for approval. there wasn't an alternative option that didn't carry significant cost or time delays. So happy to, if councillors want to share some of the feedback around that. But as of today, we are effectively requesting an extension of delegation from the 6.64 overall cost. However, 5.5 was the previous delegation, so there's just a tidy up around that. And the difference between where we originally proposed the budget and where we will likely land is effectively still made up of project contingency. So built into that project, there is still around about $200,000 of contingency that we've allowed for. Happy to do a deep dive in the post review around probably what was a significant amount of additional work we needed to do on those connections, and that is something that we're talking with other councils that as they plan their work, probably good to overestimate some of those renewals and the like that's required. So there's been a lot of ups and downs through that project in terms of the balance, but overall it's not a significant variance. So we're quite comfortable to move forward with what is deemed the most cost-effective approach to get to the finish line on this project.
Councillor Jennings, did you wish to?
Yeah, just a question, if that's all right. Dan, is it correct, to just break this into simple terms for our public, basically we set the daily number of renewals that we thought we would do, so replacement of the meters, and we thought that some of those would be easier, more straightforward than has turned out. And so the number that we thought we were going to complete each day has been higher than we're able to actually achieve. And so what we're doing through this process is saying we've forecasted that, we've understood what we can actually achieve and what resources are needed to achieve the levels, the revised levels, and basically the budget is a small overrun, but also just a tidy up of the previous allocation that we'd set aside in our budget.
Look, you're pretty much 100% correct. The productivities weren't able to be achieved. We've taken learnings over the last 12 months, and what was identified with respect to the maintenance on our existing meters has been substantially more than what was originally thought. So with this revised budget and the outsourcing model, we've taken all that into account, and by doing that, we've now picked up on the additional works at the same time.
Mr. Proctor.
I just have a question as well. One day I'd love an engineer to turn up and say, I've actually saved you a whole lot of money and have to return a whole lot of money back to you rather than saying I want more money. Anyway, my question is that, so the original project was for 6.46. You budgeted it out at 6.58, but you're saying that you need an extra 200,000 just for contingencies on top of that. What can you provide more detail around that extra 200,000 of contingency?
I can give you the breakdown on that. So within the 6.58 in the revised budget, we threw $100,000 contingency as for third-party contractor risk, and then the additional 200,000 based on the unknowns with respect to the existing network and the maintenance work required. And what we have seen, we see that there's going to be more works, maintenance works required, so we're throwing a contingency in there to cover that off till the end of the project.
We also don't want to be back again to council other than delivering the message that we're able to give some funding back on completion of the project. So that's where we'd like to be in December.
And the quicker we get it finished, the better for our plants and different networks, I'm sure. Any further questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I suppose, guys, if this came to the government project steering group, the inevitable question would have been around the less flexibility of the remainder of the CapEx program. So what could be affected by that? Is there a sort of impact there that jumps out there?
No, this had all been taken into account with updated budgets at the previous capital project steering group and within the allocations in the annual plan. So it made an assumption around this based on the guidance we got at the PRG. So there wouldn't be any adjustment to bring forward or carry over. So it's all currently taken into account as the resolution stand.
Councillor Grimstone.
So, Daniel, just pick up on your point. So, was it 40% was the figure of water savings based upon water meterage going in? I guess not now, but at a future stage, I'd quite like to understand how that translates into saved costs for delivery of water and the benefit, that on-flowing benefit to the ratepayer as well of whatever we end up saving.
Yeah, there's quite a range of complexities in terms of usage and trying to compare 1 year with the peak summer versus a year that might have been a bit wetter. So we're trying to understand some of those anomalies, but early numbers are around 40% Shannon, 30% Foxton. Won't state a number for Livin, but yeah, we really want to scrutinise that as part of our post-contract review early next year and put a financial number on, whether it's a pro rata basis in real terms, what we've saved. Straight away there's a chemical cost saving. There's other things that we want to kind of set out and create a best practice case study around what's been achieved that can be shared, and we'll know what the success of the project is at that point.
Dan, just a question. We're not finishing the job until December this year, but so it carries over 2 CapEx years, if you like. So we're 3, but this extra money is coming out of which year? This year, next year? Next year.
I think we've got 950 to go. I need to pull out that number.
Right.
953 or something rings a bell for cost to complete this financial year.
Right.
But there's a little bit of, we're really monitoring that completion date. It's probably wavering on just prior to Christmas or rolling into early January.
Sure.
We'll kind of monitor that in the next couple of months. But the balance of the funding is next financial year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's budgeted.
Yeah. And I think kind of in answering that question is, I don't want to distract the conversation, but it probably kind of spotlights the decision-making process. And, the reality is you've adopted the annual plan, and the annual plan identifies this budget in it. But given the Chief Executive's delegations and how tight the delegations around a Chief Executive sits, it requires us to go through a procurement review group process. It also requires us to bring it to Council. So really the big decision that you're making is the Chief Executive's delegations, because you have, in adopting an annual plan and adopting the capital program, set this. This is what this paper does, is spotlights and explicitly puts the focus on the water meter project.
Councillor Jennings.
So just based on that comment, basically we're dealing with the budget matter related to the water meters today, but the bigger question and bigger decision for Council is around reviewing delegations to make things more streamlined and work better, particularly where there's already clear alignment in terms of what's in the annual plan or in terms of our planning documents. Is that the subtext?
Yeah, I don't think that's a decision for today. I'm just trying to highlight to Council that the actual water meter budget you adopted when you adopted the annual plan.
Of course we did. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Daniel. Thank you, Jeremy. And just want to acknowledge the fact that we're hearing about this before the project's completed rather than 2 weeks or after the project's been completed is a good signal to receive. So the resolution now reads that Council approve the new revised district water meter project plan, noting an increased budget from 6.64 million to 6.78 million, noting that the budget increase will be required to come from existing CapEx budgets. And D, that Council approve financial delegation to the Chief Executive for the sum of 6.78 million for the delivery of the district-wide water meter project. I have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Jennings, seconded by Councillor Grimstone. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Tamihana.
Kia ora, guys. Thank you. I only wanted to comment because I was one of the ones that voted against this initially, and just wanted to declare that I was quite sceptical of the project and the large amount of commitment to it at the time. but I absolutely see the value in the work that's been achieved and the savings across the district through our treatment plants and water delivery, which is essential. Water is life. I have no doubt about that. I think what I really like about it too is that it's going to assist with how much water we treat and how much we supply, and will hopefully in time identify lost supplies, perhaps even illegal access to water perhaps we don't know about, but it's actually what the true availability of water is across our district, and to assist our guys in managing it, and ensuring resilience for our community too, which is one of our top priorities. And I also just noted here, I do wonder about the ongoing maintenance and technology advances as we progress on this pathway, so just wanted to note that. And I also wanted to acknowledge those actually that aren't connected to water meters. I think it's important that we acknowledge those folks that potentially are still contributing towards this project in other ways. Kia ora.
Any further? Oh, we're just getting those figures right, are we? 6.46 to 6.78. Yes. Okay. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. All right. So we're now moving to reports, and our first one is 8.1, the organisation performance report up until the end of April 2025. And I'm assuming, Jacinda, you're going to introduce anything about financial stuff, and if the Chief Executive has any commentary first.
I'll just take the report as read. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Through your worship, there is just a couple of things I wanted to highlight from a financial perspective. You will have noticed in the report there's been a few changes in terms of how it's presented. One of the key changes is around that debt management area, is trying to provide some more specifics for you in terms of where we've got some ratepayers or some customers that are owing us money, where we're at in the stage of collection, so you can understand progress and things that we're doing in that space as well. There has continued to be a significant focus on that, and there will, even that is increasing at this stage in the finance team as well. We are seeing some good results in terms of the work that we're doing in that space, despite the fact that it's difficult. What you'll also see in there as well is there will be an alignment going forward in terms of the risk dashboard that comes to the Risk and Assurance Committee, and the alignment of the way that story is talked about in the RAC dashboard as well, to be aligned with what you see in the organisation performance report, so that people can more easily understand. Another thing I wanted to mention was in relation to the underlying surplus for the organisation. So we have continued to focus as an organisation on where we're going to land by the end of the financial year. We are still confident that we will reach approximately 300,000 in terms of an underlying surplus. In some areas, that's going to be a challenge, but I think some of the things that have made that work for us well from a culture perspective in the organisation is our senior leadership cohort group, which is all of our leaders that report to the executive leadership team. Once a month, we get together and we discuss financial performance at an individual business area level, where people are held accountable for what they're putting forward as their forecast, and there's an opportunity to have good challenge around that table. So it's really building a good culture of accountability that is helping us to be able to achieve that. On the capital side of things, in the adoption of the annual plan today, effectively, that is what the budgets are planned for. The forecast that we assumed while we had a budget that was signed off in the LTP, sitting at 44 million with some additional amount approved as part of carry forwards coming into this financial year. The forecast that, in signing off the annual plan today, the forecast that you signed off as part of that from a debt and capital perspective was 36.7 million for this financial year. In saying that, and I know that Caro mentioned this as part of her introduction, is that there will be some movement, and Daniel mentioned it in his last report as well. there will be some movement likely in that number between what we think now and where we land at the end of the financial year. And the key reason for that is timing. There may be some things where we think things are going to follow a certain path in terms of timing. It is likely that there will be some movement. There's also some budgets in there around projects like the Live in Town Centre where things may change between now and the end of the year. So that could move somewhere between 2 and 5 million, but that may sound large, but there are some significant projects in there that can easily shift that number quite quickly. So, and again, it's just relation to timing, and I think it's good to have that discipline now at this table where we regularly review that 3-year program rather than looking at each year from an individual perspective. So those are the key points I wanted to make, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Jacinda or any other parts of the report? Maybe I could start with a question regarding the community infrastructure activity. We talk about how we've seen an increase in fly tipping recently and household rubbish in the gardens. So we're talking about our gardens, and what does a street tree and vegetation policy actually mean?
Thank you for the question, through you, Your Worship. We have seen an increase in fly tipping. Well, our open spaces maintenance team have seen an increase of fly tipping out in our public gardens and along our urban berms. But in particular, the gardens that's where they have been working and then come across household rubbish intermixed and hidden within our bushes. In terms of the street tree policy and street tree and vegetation policy, this piece of work is kind of twofold. Firstly, you may recall when we were looking at the urban berm mowing process, we got a number of questions from the community around what could be planted within our berms. And so we're just trying to create a framework on what can be done safely. And then secondly, we've had a number of requests for trees. And so we're just trying to provide some guidance to our community on how we will maintain our current trees and what trees are best to be placed on new developments.
I look forward to being able to lease my berm out to a potato grower or something that might be able to use the expanse that I have and save me mowing it. My next question was just in terms of the progress on the Te Awaha Newstra roof. How is that coming along?
Thank you, Your Worship. The roof is progressing well. We had a slight delay due to weather, but is due to be finished at the end of May on target.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Tamihana.
Oh, thank you. Just a couple of questions from me. Page 362. Just the number of consents, and I suppose I don't need the detail right now, but it would be good to get a breakdown of how many of those consents go across to iwi partners. So, and what triggers them being involved in those consents if required at all. So that's just one. Like I said, I don't need answers now. It's just things I'd like to know. Page 388, note 5D. Just like a little bit of an explanation around that, if possible. If someone could share with me what that means. So it's page 388 of the overall thing. Note 5, the other expenses favourable partially due to the timing of expense for Māori partnerships. This will be on a budget by year end. So I just wanted some clarity around what that means.
So that refers to the timing in which we pay the quarterly instalments of the existing resourcing agreements. And for payment to be made, it requires the report from the previous year to be submitted and approved. And so all that is signalling is that we're a little bit out of sequence, but by year end, we're anticipating to be at budget.
Sorry, just turn your mic.
Apologies. Just for clarity, are we allowed to disclose who we're talking about there, or how many arrangements we're talking about?
Yeah, so that's referring to our resourcing agreements with Moepoko, Te Korahi and Rangatane, but it also will, what it won't be referring to because we pay it via salary is the contribution we make towards the Te Tumata Ka Hoki role.
Thank you for that. And just a note, what I found quite interesting in this was how much impact, particularly water and roading, seem to have on our organisation as a pattern I picked up in whether we're favourable or not favourable. So just showed me our resilience, I suppose, to those two sectors.
Yeah, they're the largest budgets within the organisation, so yeah, it would make sense that they do.
Last one for me, sorry, it was page 393, Debt Management Centre, and I was interested in two parts of it. One, there's a Māori land property described in there, and then in the mortgagee process it has 30 properties, and I just wondered whether I could understand what the process is, one around the Māori identified property, what's the pathway around that property, what are we saying here in this piece, and are there any other Māori lands within the mortgagee process that are, and it's just for, again, my own information to understand how rating impacts this today still.
Through your worship, I will come back specifically on that one to make sure I have all the detail and email back on that particular property. Generally, that will be if there is some land that is leased for business purposes, because any Māori land that is not leased is non-rateable from a legislative perspective. But I'll clarify for you just to make sure. Then, in terms of that other question around the mortgagee process, or the generally from a local government rating perspective, if there are properties where they do have a mortgage on the property, then if those individual ratepayers, either through choice do not pay for their rates, then the council has, and I think this was an article that was in the news recently around this from a Stuff article in the last within the last month, is the council has the ability to go to the bank and ask them to pay the rates on behalf of that ratepayer, and then they will effectively add that amount on to the mortgage. What that does, that particular mechanism for council is really significant. And one of the reasons why it's really significant is Standard & Poor's, in terms of their rating of us from a rating agency perspective. We're in the A category, which is really high from a local government from an overall rating perspective. And it's because there is some security for the council in being able to ask the banks to help repay those rates. And also there is the ability for councils, if a ratepayer doesn't have a mortgage and continues not to pay their rates, then there is the ability, if that value gets high enough or it lasts for long enough, that the council can be able to then sell the property to be able to recover those rates. So there's a couple of instances, if they have a mortgage and if they don't. It's not something that we like to do, but ultimately, if we do need to make sure that we're recovering it on behalf of the community at large.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd actually like those both answers provided in an email to me. It feels like I'm going back 200 years. Thanks.
If you question and then a comment. I refer to page 370, Pūnaho, Lake Horowhenua, the development plan. can we have an assurance that all the money from the Better Off funding will be used so none of it goes back to the government by the end of June?
My understanding is that the Lake Domain Board had a really productive meeting on Monday, and officers have assured me that I can give you that assurance that the money will be spent on things that the Lake Domain Board have endorsed.
No, that's great. And just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, in reference to page 380, 381, the Foxton Community Plan. Last week, the 6th of May, Tuesday, the meeting at the Manawatu Marine Boating Club, and Councillor Tamihana was there also. I counted 17 members of the public who were prepared to step up, put their names to activity. The purpose of that meeting was just to give absolute clarity to what does it mean to be involved? Some estimation around what are your commitments, what sort of time is involved. So I think it was very helpful, a supportive way of saying to people, we need you, here's the reality of what it will mean. So that was a good next step, I think, and a number of people then attached their names to 4 of the 6 PO, and others were going to email their choices. So a good next step forward.
Sorry, that just triggered a memory for me actually to raise today, if you don't mind. But it was just for consistency of our records. I did note when I was going through our papers reference to Manawatu Estuary management plan again. I would really like us to adopt Te Papangoa Te Whārangi management plan. The name was gifted. I think we should celebrate and use the name appropriately across our organisation. Kia ora.
Noted.
All right. Any further? Oh, Councillor Jennings, sorry.
Sorry, just one last question. Without getting too political on the merits of it, page 342 in the composting trial, pretty woeful participation rate of 35%. But do we have any? I don't recall council setting any targets or any performance measures for the pilot. But do we have any internal measures of whether this is a success, or like benchmarking against other pilots or other councils? Like, how are we measuring the pilot?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. It's only a short-term trial. These are emerging numbers. We will have more information on a weekly basis and bring that back in a project completion report, but also noting there's a wider consideration around the direction of government, waste levies, WMP, and our waste services, and officers are in preparation for a paper to go to the procurement review group on the 28th of May through to a sort of information and endorsement session at the June Council meeting, effectively. Yeah, so you'll get more information will come to light in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Daniel, just a quick one. The report says that we're still at level 2 water restrictions, but I understand that they have been removed. Is that correct?
Uh-huh. Correct. So that's just remembering from a timing perspective,
yes,
this report gets completed 2.5 weeks before the actual council meeting.
So where do we find out where they have been lifted? Would there have been a media release or something, or it just happens?
Yeah, it was. So the lifting of water restrictions was in both Community Connection as well as on Facebook, but it was also in Open Words trying to do this.
I do read along, so I don't know how I missed that. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, no further questions. Just want to acknowledge again the work that goes into producing this report. A 100-page report of 2 months' activity is very, very comprehensive and thorough. And as I keep saying to the community, if you want to actually find out what's going on and try to accuse us of trying to hide things and not be open and transparent about things, then this is the report that you need to read to ensure that you are up to date with what is going on. Okay, moving on now to 8.2. Oh, sorry, did I not moved and seconded the report? I'm happy to move. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now moving to 8.2, Council Resolution Actions Monitoring Report. I'll move that the report be received and noted. It's seconded by Councillor Olsen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any items in that report that councillors wish to bring to our attention? Right, there being none, let's move to 8.3, the Long-Term Plan 2024-44 Monitoring Report. Move that this report be received and noted. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now to 9.1, the proceedings of the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board for the 10th of March 2025.
Sorry, Mayor Bernie, you're moving so quick I didn't get to ask for a couple of, just a couple of updates.
Sorry, which one are we going back to? Can you just turn your mic on, please?
Oh, geez. Sorry, 8.2, page 428, and I was just seeking an update on the Foxton River Loop name. I've noticed been sitting there for a while, so certainly keen to see that shift. And the other one I was going to raise, oh no, it's an 8.3. That's all I was going to raise at 8.2. And 8.3 was just what I raised previously, 435, which is around the name of Papamoa Te Whanangi and the use of it appropriately being used. Thank you. Those were them.
Thank you.
Yeah, so noted in terms of the point for 8.3. In terms of 8.2, the item around the river loop, yeah, we don't have any further update than what was provided to elected members. We are working with Te Tumata Ka Hoki around that short form agreement.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
And again, you went a bit quick for me too, Mr. Mayor, just on the LTP monitoring report. Page 436D, the district plan change to protect Waihi Tapu. The words used, unable to progress very far and no defined scope. Could we just have an update about what the issues are there?
They start off with some good intent to meet with Iwi Hapu. That has been one where Iwi Hapu have not had the capacity to go ahead with some of those meetings, and so we haven't advanced it further. The defined scope probably should have a yet in there. It really is that we want to be able to have those conversations to put the scope around it and to be clear in terms of what that is going to include and not include when we take forward that piece of work. So we understand what we're trying to do. It's about how it gets shaped and the process for doing that. And ideally we want to be working with our iwi and hapu partners to be shaping that.
Can I speak to that in my capacity as chair of District Plan Steering Committee? So, Deputy Mayor, the Councillor Tamihana and I met with staff and discussed a kind of what might be described as a sort of initial brain dump of ideas and a potential scope, but the agreement of the broader District Plan Steering Committee, and I understood Council, was that we would have that dialogue with the partners to check that those initial thoughts around scope and whether it's this or this, that first needed a conversation. And so we're in that very early stages of actually working out what the parameters might be and what the priorities are, because there could be a number of phases or elements as well that we need to work through. So we really needed to have that initial conversation to test some of the initial thinking, which we didn't want to describe as a scope because we wanted to have that dialogue first.
So again, just to be blunt, so to be clear, there has been no tardiness on our part in terms of the efforts we are making. Correct. I just need that to hear that. Right. Thank you.
And I will try to be a bit more slower for those members of the table who struggle to keep up with me as much as well, I'm trying to move the agenda through in a timely manner, if that's okay. Well, you need a secretary or something like that next to you to remind you of these sorts of things. Okay, so can I move to 9.1? Yeah. Let's move. Okay. All right. Proceedings, Te Awa Foxton Community Board, and the Chief Executive just informed me that the Chair of the Community Foxton Board, Mr. Gilling, has since put his apology for this meeting. But I'll just move that the proceedings of the Te Awa Foxton Community Board of the 10th of March and the minutes be received and noted. Second, Deputy Mayor Allen. Thank you. All those in favour? Any items on those minutes that anyone wishes to highlight? Councillor Jennings.
So my only, it's probably not a question to be answered today, but for further follow-up. But in light of the property strategy decision made today around the iwi first rights of refusal, there's obviously some discussion in the minutes about the Foxton Beach Endowment Fund review. And so I've just got a question mark over how council level policy will now render some of that review redundant or might impact. Sorry, I shouldn't say redundant. How it could mean that elements of that review are now no longer required or could impact that review. And so it would be useful to have an understanding of, as part of implementing that the policy direction, what is the impact on the review?
Yeah, we'll bring that advice back to council, but also to the community board who have a hui next week about the next stages of that. My sense is that the conversations between Hapu and the community board about the endowment fund, while there's a property component to that's not been captured in the current endowment fund policy. That's council decisions. It's more about the use of the funds that has been.
So it's about the distribution of the funds as opposed to.
Well, if we think about the current policy construct of the Foxton Beach Endowment Fund, that is what the policy speaks to. It's about use of funds. It's not been about the property. It's not been about the property portfolio. But we can bring advice.
Sounds like that's a waste of your time if it's in terms of providing that advice, because it's not within the scope of the review. So I wouldn't bother. That's all good. I'm happy.
Unless Ashley wants to comment further at this stage. Okay, we'll come back to council with advice.
Yes, I'll tell you.
Look, just wanted to comment and thank the Te Awa Foxton Community Board for their work and note the work going on around the Foxton Resilience Group, and just wanted to endorse those comments that it's actually been a really positive space, and it seems like there's some really good outcomes happening there for the community. I understand with the endowment one that there's a workshop coming up very soon. If councillors don't know, that's an opportunity. Maybe they want to go along and potentially share in that workshop, maybe to get a little bit more understanding. And Foxton Futures, just wanted to endorse what Deputy Mayor Allen said about the good attendance, or great attendance actually, and people putting their hands up to support the aspirations of Foxton and Foxton Beach, and also just to to share about the recent application that was lodged, I believe, with the Regional Infrastructure Fund, and I was pretty sure our council may have supported that application. I won't qualify that, but just wanted to say there's a whole lot of great work going over there by a lot of people.
So, with your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, just speaking briefly to the Endowment Fund Hui next week, and just to put on record that, in fact, there is representation, apart from the Community Board, on that Hui by Councillors Tamihana Hori-Tapara, yourself, of course, and Councillor Brannigan and me, and I sense it will be an important next step, that Hui, so it'd be really good if we, the council table, can be represented as much as possible.
Thank you. All right. 9.2, the proceedings of the Chief Executive Employment and Performance Committee from the 19th of March. Move that these proceedings and the minutes be received and noted. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The proceedings of the Community Funding and Recognition Committee from the 2nd of April 2025. Move that these proceedings and the minutes be received and noted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Allen, seconded by Councillor Brannigan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any comments or anyone wants to raise anything in those minutes? Right. Moving to 9.4.
I do apologise. I am just going to say one comment, if I may. Just wanted to actually acknowledge the implementation of the Urupa Whānau Maintenance Fund. It's fantastic to see it up and running, and want to acknowledge the team that have been working with those that have been successful in their application, and for the vision, I think, of those that saw an opportunity here to support other ratepayers in our district. And if I can take us back in history, I remember one of my first endeavours as a councillor in a council building, aside from paying fines, was over the old building on the corner there, where my auntie Cindy Tamihana actually brought a proposal to our council to establish an Urupa fund based off work that we had seen undertaken by Kapiti Coast District Council and Te Atiawa ki Whakarongotai of the time. And so it's interesting that some 20 odd years later, we have managed to put something in place in this regard. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Kia ora.
Thank you. Right. So just being reminded, 9.4 we have already dispensed with. So we're moving to 9.5, the proceedings of the Risk and Insurance Committee from the 30th of April 2025. Move that the proceedings of that committee be and the minutes be received and noted. Seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Again, any questions, clarifications sought on those minutes? Then moving to 9.6, the proceedings of Te Awaho Foxton Community Board from the 5th of May 2025. Move that these minutes be received and noted. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Again, any comments of that meeting, which seemed to have lasted 22 minutes?
Quite a few members missing.
Okay.
It made things very easy.
You mean efficient, not easy? Yeah, easy is not necessarily efficient. That you maybe should use. Okay, so now that brings us to the end of our open agenda. We're now making a recommendation that we exclude the public under the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act, and that we will be discussing Levin Wastewater Treatment Plant Inlet Pipe and Bulk Main Upgrade, Council Resolution Actions Monitoring Report for May, proceedings of the Public Excluded Risk and Insurance Committee meeting from the 30th of April, and proceedings of the Public Excluded Chief Executive Employment Performance Committee from the 19th of March. I'll move that. Can I have a second? Councillor Olsen, thank you. All those in favour? Again, thank you to those members of the public who have watched this, and also all those in attendance. Appreciate your attendance.